welcome everybody. We're happy to have you here, and I'm going to turn the mic over to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Can you all hear me? Wonderful. I'm very excited to have all of you here tonight. And so I can assume safely that we all love television. Do we all love television? Is that why we're here tonight?
Or want to make money with it.
Wonderful. Yes, yes. So that's wonderful because the name of tonight's event, as you all know, of course, is the future of television propositions for an audience that has seized the remote control. And I really think that we have, in fact, seized the remote control. And I feel like even just past weekend's Golden Globes Award, like kind of are a testament to it, where Netflix produced show House of Cards and other Netflix produced shows were nominated for awards, and House of Cards actually took home one statue. And the way that Netflix did it, as we all know, like they put the entire show, all seasons of all episodes of them on Netflix for us to binge watch. And in fact, that there is a new word for the dramatic watching of one episode after the other until your eyes bleed definitely points to the fact that things have dramatically changed in the field of television. And we're here to discuss this tonight. Let me back up just a little bit. So how Laurie said, the idea was born when I had attended a couple of these MIT Enterprise Forum events and realized that I was having like very, very interesting discussions kind of in the back of the room. And my idea was to bring the back of the room to the middle of the room and make sure that we don't really have a panel, we don't have an audience per se, we're all involved in this. And luckily, the board agreed with it, and together with my partner in crime, Richard Weissman, I developed and produced tonight's event, and I'm very happy that you're all here. So what is this about? Like, our plan is our goal was to bring together current and future stakeholders of the television industry, which is new and seasoned innovators that are innovating the space, entrepreneurs that are currently monetizing the space, representatives from within the industry, investors who provide the capital that helps to move the needle, as well as other people that are fascinated or share our love and fascination for the changing landscape of television. And so that's why we are all here tonight, and I'm looking forward to a very lively discussion. And before I turn the mic over to Richard, I want to express and extend our gratitude, like to Chad Burnham Park and especially Laura Hoberman for gratitude, for her hospitality and generosity, and also, of course, for the cookies outside. Thank you.
I baked all night.
Good, thank you. So this is going to be pretty free-flowing, but I thought it would be useful to try and at least do a little bit of level set on what we thought we'd cover, which is basically, what's the future of TV and how can I make money at it? And it's also fitting, of course, that we're doing this at 30 Rock, which was once known as Radio City. So here we're coming up with the future of TV. So if you looked at the material that we linked to the Google Doc that sort of set some structure, we listed some of the key challenges and some of the promising solutions. And that's sort of what we want to talk about, is the dynamic of what those are. Just to quickly recap, on the challenges side, they're all interrelated, and it's kind of just a convenience to help structure them. Discovery, of course, is a key limitation. We've now got content all over the place, and the question is, how do I find it? We don't, the grid is no longer useful, and it's not just the VOD, it's what's on Netflix, whatever. Viewer control has gotten to be a major mover of this business in general, and the technology is enabling much more of that, and it's changing a lot of the viewing habits. Convergence is a word that we've been talking about for well over a decade, and it's happened to a large extent at a very low level, but the convergence at the user interface level has been limited still. And you can think of convergence at two levels. One is the device convergence, that I want to be able to view any kind of content that's in the cloud anywhere on any screen that I have at any time, and maybe switch them back and forth from different screens. The The other kind of convergence, and that's starting to happen, the other kind of convergence, of course, is going from the web, discovering things and saying, I want it to play on my TV. Or having something on TV and getting web content on your phone or iPad that's related to it, that lets you order a product or figure out what to watch next or who's the cast for that show or statistics for sports, whatever. So that, there's a lot more. The past few years have been an amazing change, starting to provide these things in the mass market, but it's still just the tip of the iceberg. The last general thing that's on our list is monetization and rights, which of course is the critical issue as to what we can do and how fast and who's going to support it. And there may be others, so this group, feel free to suggest other important pieces. The document listed some impediments to change, but I'll skip over that. I think we know most of those. And just to quickly recap some of the promising solutions. And again, I think you can make the case that all of these are things that are desirable. It's really a question of in what combination, how you put them together, which ones are dominant, and how do you grab a few of these and use it to change the world. So one, in the whole area of discovery, we've seen over the top like Netflix. We've seen TV everywhere coming from the cable companies. We've seen not much yet of unified discovery, which is how do I decide what to watch from my DVR, from my VOD, from Netflix, from Hulu, without having to go silo by silo and check what's there. So that, I think, is a huge opportunity. Web discovery to TV, finding things on the web and just pushing a button to make it play on TV. Comcast announced the See It button that's designed to do that, so maybe that will get some traction. Screen shifting is another big thing, and it's the area that I've been very focused with the work I've done on what I call coactive TV. Chromecast has been a major step toward that direction, letting you, and AirPlay does it, Smart Glass does it, and Microsoft World with some really nice features. So you should be able to move from any screen to any other screen, and you should be able to do enhancements from any screen on any other screen. So again, it's still crude, the interfaces are non-standard, it's fragmented, but we're seeing progress. Speaking of enhancements, which is the term that sort of generically applies to things that are web-like stuff that relates to what's on TV. A major trend has been social TV, services like Into Now, Shazam, GetGlue, ZBox, that are getting some traction. Other kinds of sync enhancements that are synchronized to what you're watching on TV. The move of Twitter to AdSync is a very primitive but wide-reaching offering that could get some traction and bring this to a more mass market. The enhancements may be third-party, and there's interesting legal issues as to how much third parties can do enhancing other people's programs, whether it's with permission through syndication or not. T-commerce has been the dream since Friends was on, when it was wanting to buy Jennifer Aniston's sweater, and that's beginning to get to be mass market. There's the question of a la carte versus bundles, subscriptions versus ownership, and whether the content business should be separated from the transport business. It's actually been cable companies talking about getting out of the TV content business. So there's a lot of interesting things happening, and that's sort of what we want to cover and see if we can maybe make some new synthesis, put some things together in new ways to get some ideas that you didn't have before.
So the rules of the game is we want to have an active discussion. Like these are the possibilities, and also thank you for everyone who shared their ideas like for topics and who shared like challenges that they wanted to discuss and solutions that they wanted to discuss. And somebody will have to be the first one to start a discussion, and then we will create a conversation thread. So maybe like kind of after you finish, like kind of open it up like with a question to the audience so that we can actually engage. Yeah, so we have a strict 1 minute time frame, like that will be reinforced by Eddie over there. We had to use like an iPhone app because we didn't have the Golden Globes budget for an orchestra to get you up on stage. And we will hand over the microphone, and then I will ask you to kind of just exchange it among yourself, and then if you sit too far from each other, we will just help you kind of move the microphone along. But who wants to say the first thing and start the discussion? It has to be someone. Oh, okay, good. Wow.
Do I need the mic? You can hear me?
Yeah, we're recording, I think, so we do.
Oh, okay.
That'd be great.
We're-
All right, who's going to take a chance with this?
I will. I'm bold. Check. Okay. Hi, Paul Guerin, forum member and founder of Wi-Fi NY. So Richard, some of the things that you described in terms of these different silos are really how people have been trying to hack the regulatory regime. This is the biggest impediment, I think, to progress. And if we want to just say down the road, the long horizon, the future of TV is that none of these things are relevant. Relevant is that TV is data. Right now we're fighting over the bundle versus unbundle, retransmission rights, all these kind of things. The Aereo case is going to be a very decisive factor in a lot of these type of things about what constitutes the right to rebroadcast, et cetera. What it really comes down to isn't the means of transport. In my opinion, I think it really comes down to two things, what you said, discovery and monetization, and how to do that fairly. All the other stuff, the technologies that are trying to hack the regulatory regime are passing trends, in my opinion. Does anybody want to comment on that?
I agree with your big picture, but I think there's another dimension that you have to keep in mind. We're in now the second great transition in the television marketplace, from broadcast to multi-channel, which actually I think the remote is a representative of multi-channel. And we're going to on-demand. And to be honest, I don't know what represents the on-demand era of television, which we're going into. Maybe an iPad or something like that. But if I took out my phone and got my glasses on, I could read you a quote from Roger Ailes about his teenage son. And basically, he doesn't know what a TV is. It's something you can get Netflix on or an occasional sporting event. His generation thinks that movies can be watched on telephones. That's a quote from Roger Ailes. And putting his politics aside, which in New York may be controversial, obviously he's a genius in this business. And so the generational, think about how long, even now, the broadcast networks have some clout. And it's going to take a long time for his son and my son, who's on the screen while I'm watching TV, to become the mass of the marketplace and reflect what you've said.
I said long horizon.
Yeah, please.
On the same topic.
Yeah, related. I want to go back to your very first slide in the title of tonight and just ask, what is your definition of TV when you say the future of TV? Because I think a whole lot of the things you've raised, some are today's or yesterday's definition of TV, and others are not a definition of today, but they're a blend of what tomorrow might be. And
Yeah.
I was curious about what you
Yeah,
meant.
it's a good question. And I think at times at some points, I think I use TV/video because it's really, TV is sort of an antiquated concept. You can think of maybe TV as the big screen, but it's really any kind of video, plus it's enhancements to video. So actually that's a question that came up recently in some other context, and you can almost think of it, it's all hypermedia, and you have sort of two poles of hypermedia, stuff that's video-centric and stuff that's text-centric. And the web is pretty text-centric, but it has video. TV is pretty video-centric, but the enhancements are text. And you can have all kinds of hybrids, and it all depends on the mode you're in as to what the dominant media is. And so, to me, the future is just hypermedia browsing, whether it's video, text, images, music, whatever.
Oh, I'm sorry. Having grown up with NTSC TV and channels 2 through 13, and then the UHF channels came along after that, we're still basically using the 6 megahertz wide bandwidth to broadcast television right now. The networks in New York, around 2, 4, 7, etc., 13. And then we have these crazy sub-channels that have contained infomercials and other sort of crazy content for the most part. I'm just wondering what people think is the future of the use of that spectrum. It seems like the FCC is moving away from this sort of 6 megahertz amount being used for all this sort of nonsense things. And couldn't that spectrum be better used in the future? We need localness, and we need some passive way to get content that you don't have to have the internet, etc. I just wondered what anybody was thinking about that.
Anybody?
Yeah.
I know what I think about it. I think that the transition to digital was decided too early in the 80s before they understood broadband. And the greatest error was that the broadcasting industry squandered their opportunity to use that spectrum as broadband. They should have aggregated all those channels, and it should be over-the-air broadband, because those frequencies that they own, if anybody's an engineer in this room, knows that those are the ones that propagate best. So the lower frequency spectrum propagates best. Why Wi-Fi and things like that don't work well indoors is because they can't pass through walls. So that's a technical thing, and really maybe that will change once this regulatory regime goes away. Like I said, the other thing, Richard, you brought up, not to go past my time, is that separation between transport and content is incredibly important at this point, because that's the only way that the regulatory regime can go away and that the content industry can grow, in my opinion.
Yeah, I want to pass it to Gerard. Just a quick comment, though. There's the possibility that the area case is just going to say broadcast is no longer TV. That can be used for something else.
That certainly is one of the possibilities. And I would say that, I appreciate where you're assuming the marketplace will go, and that there could be this one linchpin that changes everything. I would postulate that it's not going to be one thing. It's going to happen potentially in regulatory, but there's an ecosystem that is supported by an advertising economy that wants broadcast content to be out there because it's the best value they perceive at the moment. Now, if that content, that very popular content, winds up on the internet in someone else's hands and the audience goes there, that could crumble some of the economics you see today, which could lead to further changes in regulatory. But there's so many pieces to this question, this overall equation, that it makes it wonderfully interesting for those people I've worked with in this industry. It just keeps getting richer with complexity throughout the years. So I don't think it's going to be one thing that is the tripwire for the big change.
Can I comment about the advertising thing? Because this is information that I got.
Yeah, let's do one more. And then
Yeah,
I think
real quick. Sorry about that, everybody.
Let's do that.
Because actually, advertisers like the immediacy of the internet advertising. When they send it over the air, they have to do surveys to see how effective their ads were. If it's two-way, even if the broadcasting is so-called passive, there can still be interaction, and the advertisers will love it because they can get instant feedback on the ads.
Over there? Oh, please.
The problem with that, the strength of network television was always the unduplicated reach piece. And that's the reason it's still the biggest player in town. The problem with online advertising is just, it's too many people, you don't know how many times this one saw it versus did you get a single person that time. And the strength of network television will remain as long as it's the broadest singular reach that you get in terms of a spot. Once that breaks down, then all bets are off. And it's just, there's advertising every place, and it's just trying to aggregate the various different platforms.
So I think the one big event is Google is going to have Google TV, and they're going to buy the NFL rights. And then what happens, right? I mean, they've already got the advertisers, you got the analytics, you know, what you're watching, which ads you like. I think that's going to be potentially a big event.
I'd like to comment on that. I haven't always had cable TV personally. Allison Martin from Equinix, but personally I haven't always had cable TV. I remember some presidential debates were on CNN. I was very frustrated. I could not watch them. As Google has NFL rights or other online properties, what are we doing? What, if any, discussion from a public perspective will be put in place to make sure people who might not have internet access at home, well, we are all lucky enough to have that, still have access to some of the things that we consider culturally to make us Americans?
This is great. We get exercise
Yes.
at this thing, too. So I love that point of view. And it's not that I'm, looking for the egalitarian solution, but the fact of the matter is there's an interesting value exchange between the broadcast networks and the public. Now, granted, there's only 15 to 25%, depending on which survey you listen to, in terms of consumers consuming broadcast TV without going through some pay TV service. But if indeed the NFL goes from broadcast TV, or more and more games go from broadcast over to behind a paywall, what does that mean for society? I agree, that's a very interesting question. Does it mean that we're on a path where absolutely every piece of content you could possibly want to see is behind a paywall, or you have to sit through a certain amount of advertising to get at it? The models are changing, and they're going to change radically over the next few years. And the opportunity to make money is in finding where the next great model is going to emerge.
Steve Ashman from Content Galaxy. I'd like to follow up on the question of model. I think a lot of the open question is, what is the model of content monetization that's going to work first for content that's not currently able to be monetized? And that's going to give us a clue, potentially, as to what will happen going forward with content that's more high-end and already able to be monetized. So instructional video is a very important category of video that has a great deal of social significance, and at the same time, one of the 21st century problems is, how is that going to be monetized? People don't buy DVDs, or less and less, and nevertheless, there's great material that's available that you can't live on giving away for free on YouTube. And so if you look at the different alternative content monetization models, in some sense, there's only three: subscription-based, item-by-item purchasing, and ad-based content. And so I throw it back to the audience to talk a little about where they think those are heading.
Thank you. First of all, I apologize for my voice. I left it in the Las Vegas Convention Center last week. Two comments. One, I really appreciate that, but one of the things I wanted to mention underneath monetization and rights is the most important issue, and that's measurement. Because if we can't measure it, we can't monetize it, and we can't run, and no one will release the rights. And so I think that's one of the things I'd love to hear some discussion about, is how do we measure this? And the second is, I'm also on the Emmy Sports. We talk a lot about what is television. Right? And so we think, or I think, my opinion, about television in three ways, and it's changing three ways. One is that television is the device. So out at CES we saw 4K sets and curved screens and all that kind of smart TV stuff. It has nothing to do with the other part of television, which is television as a medium. And Netflix winning an Emmy for television when it was never broadcast on anything that we know as television was significant. And so what is television? Does it have to be 10 minutes long? Does it have to meet certain production values? And the third is television as experience. It used to be that we would all sit in a room and we'd watch appointment television. Now we watch it anytime, and we also do other stuff while we're watching it. And we, when we're tweeting people off The Voice at the end, what we call television has changed, and what those of us who have been beating up interactive television for 20 years are trying to figure out. So I would just like to follow up on the advertising piece by saying, let's think about measurement, and then how do we think about the future of TV in each of the three categories?
Into the back.
Hi, Gustavo de Medeiros, CEO of TeleUp. I think I can talk about the subject. We're one of the first companies to offer online cable service. We've been doing it for 6 years. We have 250,000 customers in 170 countries, 20 employees that work for me. The money is in linear television. Cable still makes 95% of the money, and that's going to remain so in the next 5 years. If you're interested in the next 5%, in the other 5%, you're going to create a little app for discovery and all that stuff. That's all fine, but the money's going to be made in offering a real cable service. And one of the opportunities is to offer it online. That's why Aereo is working so hard to offer their services without paying retransmission. But that's really where the money is. And it's going to stay that way. That's my 2 cents.
Well, yeah, I'd like to just take a moment to throw in monetization is an area that I've been working on it from a different angle, and I think there's really multiple ways to monetize, and I think we're going to see a transition to different kind of thinking where you can mix your models and have a mix of, you can decide whether you get advertising or paid. You do things through a subscription where you're building a relationship, and you can adapt to different levels of cost to different kinds of product, and that ties in with measurement. Because, excuse me, when it's a subscription model, you can be tracking what people are watching. There was an article in the Times about your ebooks are reading you. There's this huge amount of data on how you read your ebooks. And it's the same kind of issue that you can charge your ebooks based on, do you skim through them, do you read them in detail, are you reading a bestseller that just came out, are you reading something in public domain? And so you need pricing models that are much more flexible. And I think we're still sort of in a straitjacket where we've got a lot of traditional models and people are just not thinking, and it's only at the fringes where people are doing things like pay what you want, they're doing crowdsourcing, they're trying to come up with different ways to fund things. So, okay.
I wanted to say one thing about, we talked about metering for advertising. The model that we think is an important part of the future is where content is pooled into subscription channels, but the providers and the affiliates are paid based on actual subscriber usage. And that's a metered subscriber usage that can be verified. And so now you have a model in which you can create special interest channels, and where the audience is considered, but the independent content providers are not giving up their rights, but are actually able to monitor who's watching what, from where, what else did they watch, and that allows them to build more and more effective channels and add better and better content. So that's an example of a model that involves measurement as a key.
Yeah, I think the big issue with measurement, though, is that with so many different devices that we can watch the stuff we call television on, how do we create a 360 view? I mean, and that's really the question that's before us, right? I mean, and even in selling it. So I'm currently consulting with a company, and we distribute what looks like television, and we're creating other short-form content. And we're distributing it on all kinds of things. But when I'm selling the advertising, some of the advertising is coming out of a connected TV budget because it goes to a connected TV. But the same content that goes to a tablet comes out of a mobile budget. And the same content that goes to a desktop comes out of a desktop budget. And that's ridiculous, right? And the only people that have really made a lot of progress in that is ABC, with ABC Unified, that says you buy it, and you buy it wherever it goes. Because if you're buying it, you're getting engagement and content, you should be getting the same engagement. But how do we measure that? We still don't have a way to do that. No one's created a panel. No one's created an effective way to actually aggregate that up that says there were this many views of this content, and I don't care where it was.
I know other people have something to say, but quickly, as far as measurement, if it's on the internet, I mean, you have very accurate measurement, often down to the point of demographics, which is far superior to what you ever had in television.
But you need a third party to roll it out, to verify it and say, yes, that was watched, because it could be watched in so many different places. And that's the problem, right?
Okay. I'm Ruth Morrison, and the CEO and founder of What's the 411 Networks. And I just want to say that we really are in uncharted territory, and I don't think anybody really knows, because at the end of the day, television is video-based, and it really depends on an audience. And that audience is looking for compelling content. And that audience is very fickle as well, in terms of where they want to, what they want to see, when they want to see it. I mean, the tastes change like almost every other day. So it's really, really, really hard, and I just feel sorry for the people who are in the measurement business, because it's, I don't know, I think we're just gonna have to sit and wait for a while to see how all of this kind of shakes out. That's my point.
So I think we've talked a lot about people moving from television, traditional television, to online, people who grew up watching things online. But what about the people who want to watch things on television, but it doesn't exist today? And those are the people that I think advertising hasn't reached, despite how broad they think television is. Still, not everyone watches TV for content. And there is a strong additional type of grouping in which advertisers can reach through just this new video that is popping up online. There are niche content and niche groups that is completely new to the type of ad dollars that's being spent online. And I think that's probably something that no one has really discussed yet, and I'd like to position that.
It's changing so fast. It is breathtaking. Speed is everything. The clients I work with, I said, if they haven't made their decision for 2 years from now, they've already lost. Fact of the matter is, in 4 years, all the cable operators are in the broadband business. They don't want to be delivering television services per se. Comcast will be a broadband operator. They'll have an aggregator the next building over called Comcast NBC Cable Services, Inc., who will sell and merchandise services over Comcast, but you'll be paying for a big pipe to Comcast broadband. Linear television is critical because that sets the value of what the content is worth for now, and that isn't going to change right away. But with 40% of the viewing coming of those linear programs at a later time, the modeling of how you're monetizing that changes. I think that right now, if you're looking to get in this business, you need to be looking at a broadband linear hybrid business that will be dominating the industry in probably less than 4 years.
You have a question on that?
I think there's a presumption that the whole pie is going to grow, which I'm not convinced it is. I recently did an article in Forbes, and I got many, many responses from many people who had cut the cord. And they said, when you're comparing Netflix for $8 with Comcast for $120, the decision becomes very clear. And once they get a couple of these different online services, they find that they have enough. They can, if they're willing to wait one day to watch something, they can basically access anything.
But who do they get their broadband service from?
They'll get their broadband service
from Comcast.
From Comcast.
Who will charge $100 for it.
Well, certainly not now,
but if you don't
it's
have
still
their
less than 120.
subscription television service, they'll get their $100 out of you. They don't care what you buy. Buy television, buy broadband, buy home security.
I'm well aware
$130
that
a month.
Comcast considers themselves a plumber, and they just want to put things through the pipe, and they really don't care which pipe.
That's right.
They just want to pass the stuff. And Comcast doesn't know where the market is. They think it's going from mass market to niche. They don't know how fast it'll be, but they expect the pendulum to swing from mass market to niche way past where it should to absolute personalization, then to come back. But they're not sure. It's a point of view. But the essence is, I think the assumption in the room is that the revenues will continue to go up. And I'm not sure that the industry actually could have plateaued already.
I think over there. Back here.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Bill Rosenblatt from Giant Steps. You know, I find it really interesting that we're talking about Comcast or Netflix. This industry, that's a crappy choice. And that's where I think the future is with regard to programming. This industry has gone straight from, you know, TV network programming style, replicated on cable, times 500, to on demand. If you look at what happened in music with radio, you find that there's a lot in between, a lot of space to explore, and particularly the example of Pandora, somebody like Pandora. I did a study about the music that Pandora plays and found that it is asymptotically getting more and more similar to broadcast, AM/FM broadcast radio. And they do that very intentionally. They're very algorithmic about how they program music. And I think there's a lot of room for innovation in how TV gets programmed. You know, binge watching has become the version 0.0001 of the next generation of ways of watching TV. And I think that with discovery and audience feedback and so forth, there's a whole huge room for innovation with regard to providing services that are simple enough for people to use, in which they get programming that they want to see in the order that they want to see it.
Yeah, it was interesting. I went to a session at CES, and we were talking about the bundle. In Canada, for example, there's a law now that is forcing the programmers to unbundle their content, so you can just get channels a la carte. And I had the major criticism is that, as a consumer, I have to watch, I take television as a buffet. And even though I don't want to watch all these channels, I only want to watch like 4 channels. If you look at it from the cable side, they force you to get a channel. For example, if you have ESPN in your lineup, you have to get all the other ESPN channels. You cannot just get one. And there are all these little sneaky tricks they pull off to make sure that you're on the first tier. So you cannot have a tier for people that don't have as much money, that only want to have 10 channels.
Or if you don't want ESPN at all.
It's a super tricky business. And my question there to the panel was like, is unbundling really necessary? It'd be interesting for gentlemen like yourself or other researchers in the room. They basically said, I think it was a man from ESPN, that it made more sense, that it was cheaper to have a bundle, that the economics worked out better if you offered a bundle as opposed to a la carte. And I don't know how the economics actually work out. Is it really cheaper for your average consumer to have a bundle?
I think we may have an answer here.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I'm sure ESPN would say that.
I should preface that I actually used to work at ESPN. So I do know that it is in fact cheaper in the sense that you may not watch ESPN, but the person next to you may watch ESPN. But you may watch a channel that that person does not watch. You're essentially subsidizing everyone else. And so what is essentially happening is everyone gets more variety because you're subsidizing everyone else's viewing, and they are also subsidizing.
Kind of sounds like Obamacare. That's what it is. It's Obamacare of television.
And it makes television sticky, it makes the network sticky, and it makes all of these partnerships that much more long-lasting.
In the Netherlands, that's illegal. That's like a chain selling. That's saying you can buy the shoes, but you have to buy the socks.
It's tie-in sales.
Yeah, you got tie-in sales in the U.S. So I want to see the math behind that, because everybody says that argument, but I want to see the math behind it. How many Americans watch how many channels, what channels they watch, how much would it cost on average if they were unbundled?
Right, and they have done the economics.
Right. There you go.
Yes.
I would love to see the math.
They have.
In New York, you pay $50 for ESPN.
Bill, when you were just mentioning about the radio business, I thought your next statement was going to be going to the newspaper business. Because if you think about this conversation that's going on right now, isn't that what the newspaper business was all about? You had to buy the entire newspaper package, whether you were interested in sports, travel on Sunday, arts and leisure, you still had to buy the whole thing. And the newspaper business started to fold when that package was disaggregated and disintermediated. And I hypothesize that the same thing's going to happen to the TV business as soon as the bundle, whatever it is we're talking about here, is able to be forced to be disaggregated. If the providers aren't going to do it on their own and give you the opportunity to subscribe to ESPN only, somehow the model is going to change where you can get it through somebody else. Or you can, if Google goes and does it, you'll have an option to get sports through somebody else. And I think that that's where everything's going. It's just a matter of time until the bundle is disaggregated. And the TV business follows the newspaper business.
Yeah, I think, we're talking about providing programming that is easy and attractive for people. And newspapers got disaggregated, and then they got reaggregated as Flipboard, right? And so that has yet to happen in the TV space. And YouTube is an interesting cut at that, but even that I think is too hard for most people to appreciate, with regard to programming choices. I think that's what's bound to happen, and it's going to take a while because TV content is not the same as newspaper or music. It'll take a while to figure that out.
I'm a researcher in the room. I ran Time Warner Cable's research department for the last 8 years before leaving last year. And it seems to me consumers, and from the research I've done, you're right, consumers don't want to pay for what they don't watch. We all know that. And they want a la carte. They want perhaps the broadcast channels, and our research showed, maybe 3 to 5 to 7 channels that they could buy in small bundles. We started out this whole conversation talking about regulatory and retransmission, but there's a vested interest from the cable companies and from the networks too, that they don't want to unbundle these packages. They don't want people who aren't going to pay the $100 a month for that bundle. They're terrified that people might just want to pay for the $20, set of 3 to 5 channels. So despite what consumers want and the fact that it's easy to do this if they wanted to, would consumers want to pay $9.99 a month for ESPN the way they pay $9.99 for Netflix? Probably not, because when they got their 5 channels, that'd be $50 a month just for 5 channels. So I do think the economics end up favoring these bundles.
My name is Art Scheckman. I'm from Elephant Ventures. We're a consumer performance optimization company. We do a lot of measurement. And people want to buy what they want to buy. They want to unbundle. And from newspapers to radio to now television, right? The whole prospect of bundling is an artifact of the delivery mechanism. If you control delivery to the point of the gentleman in the far corner, if you're the broadest reach, you were awesome, advertisers want to spend money with you, and you could dictate to the consumer, you must pay in this manner, you must be subjected to this manner of advertising. But as broadband becomes ubiquitous, delivery doesn't matter. I'm going to buy what I want to buy. I'm going to consume what I want to consume. If you survey, the average Gen Xer 20-something out there, I forget what the number was. I wish I had it handy, but some inordinately high percentage of them have no cable feed. They watch Netflix or they consume it on demand, and that's it. So it's gone. Like the trend is already here. It's not 15 years away. It's not 5 years away, and the idea of bundling to me is just it's a dead concept. It's still in the marketplace because people have a stranglehold on subscribers, on contracts, on the delivery mechanism, but that's eroding very quickly.
Oh, we have 2 in the back here. I just want to make a quick comment. I mean, it seems what we're saying is there's really a sea change between the traditional models, which have a lot of power and are going to continue with that power for some time, and then there's the internet stuff where there's a lot more flexibility in pricing. And I think the question is how quickly the internet stuff sets the stage and changes the game.
Yeah, I think bundling is dead. I agree with that. I have a friend of mine who has a 2-year-old daughter, and she went up to the big screen TV and she went like this. And nothing happened. She was like really pissed off. She's like, why does this thing move? And that's, for me, that's bundling. Good luck. I mean, you really should give consumers the choice. If you watch 5 minutes of a show and turn it off because it sucks, we should pay 5 minutes. That's how it's going to end up. There you go.
I completely agree with you, Ben. I'm not from this industry, but my name is Ramesh, by the way. But if you look at the music industry, we've seen the pattern already. Bundling, which was the albums, you've seen the writing on the wall in terms of how disaggregation has really worked there. So I think that's where the industry is going from the outside.
You said before about 95% of the money's coming from linear, and that may be the case now, but there's just no question that it's a matter of when, certainly not if. If you take as a microcosm, look at Cablevision, they have the biggest cluster of cable homes in America. They're in 3 million plus homes. In 1 quarter alone, they lost 50,000 subscribers. Forget about losing $100 million and linear networks failing right and left. That's a pretty good barometer, I think, of where this business is going. Yeah, content is always going to be sought after, and it's true that the average baby boomer household will probably give up food in their refrigerator before they give up a cable box, but you really need to look at 30 plus and below type of demographic that won't even think about doing that unless they're making way into 6 figures, and that's not what the populace of the United States represents.
So can I just sort of see if we want to change gears? We've been talking a whole lot on monetization and business models, and I think there are probably other topics that we should be getting to, unless there's a strong sense otherwise. So, Simon?
Yeah, I was going to just say about infrastructure is that everyone's talking about the pipes, and if you take a look at Apple TV and Amazon, and it's cloud services. Everything is going to cloud services with streaming videos. So I think the infrastructure aspect of it needs to be really looked at, because cloud services are here. I mean, it's not an if or a when. It's taking place now. People are streaming videos, downloading it on their smart TVs, and it's a whole new type of distribution channel that the Comcast of the world needs to adapt, because Amazon and Google and Apple these are the new players in town.
Okay, Simon?
Let me get the mic. I'll take it.
And actually, Comcast is building a cloud service within Comcast.
Hi, everyone. I'm Simon Applebaum. I'm with Tomorrow Will Be Televised. It's the radio show that covers television on Blog Talk Radio. I'd like to offer a future that I think is a must for television, whatever form it takes, and a wish it would be a must. The must is diversity. And here's why. Because we are heading toward the day, and it's not too far away, where half the nation is going to be people of color. And the majority of people will be people of color. And if television, whatever form it takes, does not reflect that, there's issues. And we're getting better. There are more networks that are targeting African Americans, Asian Americans, Latinos, et cetera, both Spanish and English in the case of Latino Marketplace, as well as TV shows that are reflecting, like Scandal and so forth, diversity in television on different, whether it's ESPN or Disney Channel, whatever. And we got a ways to go. And that's something that has to be, I think, on the radar screen of everybody in the TV industry, and all of us here too. The second thing that I wish would be a must is investment. We have a venture capital, we have an angel investor, we have incubators like Y Combinator and Techstars and so forth that have done a fantastic job with the internet, with content and technology. They've done a fantastic job with smartphone apps and technology. They've done great with mobile, with tablets. And when it comes to television, with very, very rare exceptions, zero. And that to me is a national disgrace. It needs to be talked about by the TV industry. And it's time, way overdue time, that the next generation of television get to these VCs, get to these angels, get to these incubators who provide so much beyond investment, coaching, mentoring, getting a business plan that works as opposed to doesn't. And it's time for this whole community that could really make a big difference in the next generation of television to get off the behind and transform themselves so that we can make more headway in television, also including reducing unemployment as well, because TV does create jobs.
Okay. So I don't want to pick up on this investment in startups and new things. I think that's sort of the theme. There's a lot of interest.
Since I arrange financing and have friends and clients that are venture capitalists, and I've actually worked at an internet content company that had a subscription model. And my first thought is, you don't want these VCs in your television business. Okay, they're technology guys. They don't know squat about it. And I saw them be very harmful in a business I was in. It would be great if there were a generation, but maybe it's going to take that young generation, Roger Ailes' kid, my kid, who just have an intuitive, different sense for what television is, to really understand what the opportunities are. Because the 40-year-old, 50-year-old VCs, they don't. And there's a lot they do understand, as you said. If anybody went to the MIT Enterprise Forum is putting on great sessions. If anybody went to the last one with investors, it does show you also what you're up against in television. We had a panel of guys from angel to public markets, different stages of investment. And the angels said, show us that you can make money. Show us that somebody will buy your product. And in television, well, don't you have to sort of produce it before you can show that you can make money? And by the way, the best people in the business have plenty of flops. So investing in television is a dicey proposition for many, in the perception of many.
I have very similar views, and I'm not on the VC side, but I've been receiving end of the VC side for many times over. And I would say, Simon, that the challenge there isn't the fault. Sorry, the problem isn't the fault of the VCs. Lots of VC money came in over the last 15 years or so. I would say billions came in, but the operators who control the chain down to the consumer did not take that technology and employ it in various ways. And you and I have known each other for many years, and we've seen lots of interesting interactive TV scenarios built, soup to nuts. But if the operators who control those pipes aren't willing to deploy them, then that money lies fallow. So I'd say that VC's waiting for an ROI that makes sense in this particular market.
Let's move it to while we're moving it, I just want to throw out sort of picking up on a couple of these threads. One of the opportunities that I see is we've talked about the Pandora-like model for programming stuff. If you look at YouTube on Chromecast, you can build playlists of videos. And so if somebody wants to build a service that's the Pandora of YouTube videos and monetize that, I think there's a real opportunity there. And that could set a stage for, going up market to valuable stuff.
Can you please disclaim that we don't know each other? Because basically, I was about to say that I'm Yanis, and I'm coming from the startup world. We run a small startup that people call the Pandora of video. So, honestly, that was not paid. First of all, I'm intimidated to be among you. I'm a very small guy compared to everybody, I think, here. What I hear in the room, and your statement was actually great. I feel that there is the top-down approach. Basically, the networks, the bundle, how do we go from having a bundle of content down to the consumer? One of the reasons that there is no VC or startups around the TV area, I can answer you from my personal experience, but from other people that do the same, is that because the barriers to entry in the TV space are huge. It's impossible for a startup to go and do content when you have to raise millions just to pay for the content on top of everything else that you need to do. So that's one of the answers why startups don't go in that field. A second point is that because of the way that the industry works, and I hear that today, the bundling process and the way that the channels work all together via cable up to now is the exact contrary of what the new technologies are bringing out there. My startup maybe will not be the most successful, we're hoping to be, but there are other guys like us that are using science to come up with what consumers actually want. I mean, you mentioned before the House of Cards. I can tell you because I know what they did. House of Cards is the result of extreme statistics. They basically analyzed via science that they need to come up with a political series for targeting specific people, and that's how they came up with House of Cards. So I think the answer to the point we said before is the barriers are too high. Young people like me and my team were very, very afraid to go against the networks because I don't think the networks are ready to work with someone like us.
Yeah, actually, I had a client last year that also described itself as Pandora for TV, or for video. It was a startup, and the issue that, well, one issue that they faced was getting the rights, and their strategy was let's do whatever we can that does not involve conversations with lawyers in Hollywood.
So I think there is money going in, and maybe in the early time it was into YouTube and Vimeo and infrastructure, and today it's into Maker Studios. I don't know if it's true or not, but they say they've got 4.5 billion monthly views on content produced from Maker Studios, which is all VC. So I think the money's coming.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a horizontal nature of the industry where the biggest distributors own the best content. So they're taking their sweet time. Whenever they're ready to release their online apps, whenever they're ready, they'll do so and take their sweet time. So it's very hard for new entrants to come in because the incumbents are so powerful. And so you cannot get content. So the only thing left, and that's what we did, you take niche opportunities. Like you said, ethnic content. There's a lot of opportunities for ethnic content. Let me give you an example. Roku, right? 6 million users in the United States. So Roku is an avenue for all these little niche channels from all over the world to offer ethnic channels in the US. What happens? Dish goes in, invests in Roku, and then says, okay, fine, take off all the ethnic channels. And they kill the distribution, but they did this. So it's a cutthroat industry because it's such a great industry.
Thank you. My name is Jerry Wang. I come from China, and I just been here for about half a year. And I want to share with you guys what is happening in China in Chinese internet television. because as the gentleman has just said, what will happen when the internet company brought into the TV industry? I mean, that will change everything. There is a huge battle in China's internet TV because when internet company comes, they have their content. Because I come from LETV, that is a internet television company that they have the largest copyright database in China, and we're selling TV. We're selling 40 inches TV in the market with $250, and we're selling all the TVs on the internet. We're selling 10,000 TV on the internet in less than 1 minute. So that is what's happening in China. I mean, when you combine your what you have, when you combine your copyright, and when you are selling one of the best TV you can on the market, that will beat all the traditional TV makers, because you're selling the best thing in a low price. Because the internet companies do not sell TV for money. They just sell TV for screens, and they can provide all these stuffs to the screen, and then they can charge the consumer for the advertisement. So I think the China's internet TV industry is kind of moving faster than US, than what I saw it now. And by the way, the RETV is one of the largest company in I think in China. Their market cap is $10 billion. So that is one of the most successful. I think this is the future of TV. Yeah, thank you.
But China is a rare case. I was at the OTT summit in Shanghai last month, and the television channels are owned by the Chinese government.
Yes.
So if you want to watch some cool content, you have to go online, and we
Yes,
don't have that here. Yeah,
Yeah.
So the public channels are owned by private groups. So China is a very unique example. Just wanted to throw that in there.
I come from the feature film business and television business. I've produced for the last 30 years television programs. The mistake we're all making in this room is there's an elephant in the room that nobody sees called the advertiser.
Gave the state license to that.
That's going to generate where we're going. For example, I'm producing 70 city channels right now, network. The main thrust of it is, who is the sponsor? Nobody cares about anything else but the sponsor. When you go to CBS, I want Carriage, who's your sponsor? That's where we're going, how I can get the sponsor, the ownership to come in with me. We're going back to 1950, like the soaps. Who owns the show? Netflix is out there. IMG was the originator of the sponsorships. I don't know if anybody knows about that. But I've been at CBS with we're doing 1400 stations with them in the digital carriage, and then we're going to 156 affiliates. The key thing was, who's the sponsor I'm bringing in to the room? I did the big one for the creators, that was done for Vice magazine 2 years ago with Intel. That was the sponsor that drove the whole thing. Not Vice, it was Intel. We're working with Mercedes. Hyundai came to the table. They are now competing as an auction. Who's going to go with us? That's where it's going now. How you get to the sponsor. And that's the key. And it's not through the agencies we're finding out. It's direct. And the one who's helping you is the networks when it comes to the closing. For the carriage.
2 points to address what you said. I think that in 2 ways the barriers are going to come down. The first way is we are seeing an explosion of particularly original scripted television. At least 10 networks got into scripted TV last year. From Hallmark to History Channel to INSP to Brigham Young University Television, and for the most part they were successful. And another 10 or so are going in this year. Discovery next week with Klondike, El Rey Network, WeTV, WGN America, etc. There is a real move toward getting more scripted TV on the air, and that's one way the barrier is going to come down. The second way, it's becoming more clear for me that the smart TV is going to become the equalizer. Because with these smart TVs, which every TV set maker is making and people are buying, you can watch your favorite shows and networks, you can watch the web, not just web video, but websites, and you can watch original and use original interactive apps. And as we saw at International CES last week, depending on whether you read the headlines, the capability and the capacity of these sets is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think that is going to break the barriers down and have that smart TV the way you watch everything. And one other thing on investment, keep your eye on crowdfunding, because we're now starting to see Indiegogo and Kickstarter accept TV projects for TV pilots. And we have the equity crowdfunding rules that the Securities and Exchange Commission may be passing by March and April, and that could open the door for a lot of investment in TV.
You still listen to
Moving to the back, please.
Oh, okay. It's the advertising.
I just want to echo the advertising statement. I worked at ING for 7 years in those.
I was Mark McCormick's partner. That's why I said that with the sponsorships.
Right, and that was an inverse situation, the buyer becoming the seller and the seller becoming the buyer. And really outside of prime time and outside of the broadcast networks, if you wanted to get something on TV and outside of big sports properties, you got to buy the time. And that still exists today. So I think there is potential for a fund that does aggregate blocks of time, which during the weekend day parts, the networks are all selling that, whether it's in a sports block, whether it's in cable blocks, that does exist. So in terms of any money coming in for somebody that does want to own whatever meager rating you're going to get on cable, the fact of the matter is, outside of infomercials, the ability to control content through advertisers, just like the 50s and soap operas, certainly does exist, and that could be a point for a fund right there.
It's a VC fund. The advertisers are setting up their own fund now at a Mindshare.
My name is George Rivera. I'm a producer. I produce content, and I've worked in the networks. I've worked in public television for a long time. I care about local. I care about the public interest responsibility of what our industry does. We produce a local show. We get local sponsors to pay for the content. It's the only way that we can support the show. We produce content for those sponsors, for them to use any way they want to. And one of the things that was brought up earlier that you haven't talked about is, again, this public interest issue and local. People talk about local, but I don't see a great deal of investment in local, and we struggle to get those shows produced. We get them done, but we get them done very barely here in New York.
I think we want to try and shift gears, but let me just sort of pick up on that for a moment. I mean, that's sort of the same problem with local journalism, that it's very hard to come up with a model to monetize it. It's sort of the mass market. But we've talked a lot of, we're sort of in the monetization issue again, and I'm wondering, we've got some more technology issues like smart TVs, like enhancements to TVs, enhancement to video, and I'm curious whether there's some interest in discussion on that. And just to start it off, I'll throw out one of the issues with smart TV. I think smart TV, there's some real questions whether the smart should be in the TV. But one of the interesting places where smarts in a TV is useful is automatic content recognition. Because if the TV knows what's playing on it and broadcasts that to your devices, then you can synchronize all kinds of things around it, so it ties in with enhancement content.
Can I interrupt before we get into this discussion? Going forward, what's the definition of TV? I hear online video as short as 6 seconds, and we hear feature-length films. What is the new definition of TV that we see for the rest of the century?
There is none.
Why not?
Everybody has their own. AOL has their own, Netflix has their own, everybody has their own definition.
Why should there be one definition?
Well, we're talking about equipment now and screens, and so
that's
you're trying to create a definition.
Okay, well that's,
maybe we need a new definition.
Yeah, okay, well let me try and clarify. Back to what I was saying in the area that I've been working on is the user doesn't really care what it is. What the user cares about is out in the cloud there's video somewhere, or even on their home stuff, and they have a bunch of screens. They have a big TV screen in the living room, they have an iPad, maybe they have a phone, and depending on what they're doing at what time and what they're trying to do, they may want that on any of those screens. So I think it's really a question of what a given person wants at a given time for the kind of content they're watching and the mood they're in. So given that, how can we exploit that in terms of letting people move things from screen to screen? possibly giving them enhancements that help them navigate and find what they want to put on their screen, and being able to browse the web to find the stuff and then say, put it on my TV, so that instead of trying to deal with a cable company's navigation system that doesn't deal with Netflix or Hulu or YouTube.
You make an interesting point. The current navigation systems are controlled by the distributors. Comcast Guide isn't going to tell you that what you were looking for happens to be available on Amazon Prime.
Right.
Okay?
So when will there be?
So you talk about unified discovery. There can easily be unified discovery if either the consumer is willing to pay for it or an advertiser is willing to sponsor it. I mean, actually, it ain't brain surgery. All the metadata is out there. There's a source that will tell you exactly the show that you might want to watch or that your friend recommended that you watch, where it's going to play either live or on demand. Part of the issue is that, you know this more than anybody from your experience at Comcast, Gerard designed most of the guides that we currently use.
Great, you always skipping on
Yeah. Poking with us. Anyway, they assume a linear-based starting point. Okay? The fact of the matter is, television promotion, network television promotion, television guidance tends still to be focused on, if I don't see it tonight at 9 o'clock, I'm going to miss it. Okay? Rather than saying, no, it's the blacklist on NBC. I could watch it tonight, actually it was last night. I could watch it tonight, or I could watch it tomorrow morning on demand, or I could watch it tomorrow after 3 p.m. on NBC.com. There's a million places that I can find that if I simply had an easy way to get to it. It'd be a fabulous business if somebody is in the discovery business to do a unified guide. Will the consumer pay $1.99 a month to be able to see all that? I think it's very possible that she might. And would an advertiser pay to get that consumer's eyeballs onto that device? I think absolutely.
And would a programmer pay to be placed?
Yet, there's a problem there, because Warner Brothers might own the rights to all episodes of a given show, okay? But NBC owns seasons 1 through 4, and USA Network owns seasons 5 through 10. Okay, I'm talking about Law and Order. But, you get into that, and a controller within our current television ecosystem tends to get real wordy. I don't actually think it'll work. It really needs to be done from the outside.
So,
Can we
where's
make
the
a
mic?
quick microphone through?
I don't need a mic, so I mean.
Yes.
No, that's clear. Yes.
So one of the questions is what's holding this up?
Did you want to say something?
Just thinking about the universal discovery or the aggregated guide, I think and not to go back to monetization, but the transactional aggregation is valuable in and of itself. So I claim to not watch TV, but I'll do a transaction with Vudu and Hulu and Netflix and Bio. So if you can put the guide together with the transaction itself and disintermediate that, I think there's a business.
That would suggest that somebody would do a unified guide and the various and sundry distributors would pay them
Sharp is doing it.
for the transaction to take them off to their episode of the right season of the right show to the right viewer.
Or they pay the royalties direct.
Are you listening, investors?
So actually, CS Sharp is doing that, and there's a company called Fancast that does it too. But back to your point, Rick, you mentioned Amazon. That is the most interesting play. I was there at a panel discussion with Samsung, Sharp, and LG, and Amazon can not only ship you a smart TV, they also have Amazon Prime. They can actually deliver the content to you. So they can do what that gentleman from China says. They can actually sell the TV, subsidize the TV, get a free TV as long as you subscribe to our.
And if you have Amazon Prime, the shipping of the TV is free. Today.
We talked about centralized discovery, but I think there's another take on discovery that's possible because of the low cost of somebody promoting their own content through social media, through email newsletters, Facebook, and also through their websites. So I think one of the ingredients that's missing is the serendipity that causes people to find great content. Well, one of the ways that you can create more of that is to make it possible for the people who actually have contributed content to earn money from viewers that they attract and viewing that gets attracted through their sites and social media. So that you actually have a way of lowering the discovery costs and the marketing costs for the producers. There's the opportunity now with the internet. If you can measure, you can then start talking about who caused subscription sales, how much viewing was done, and that gives an opportunity now for people who are content providers and then people who admire those content providers all to become part of this new way of marketing. So in some ways, it's the other side of the centralized discovery. It's the individualized discovery.
Yeah, I'd like to, where are we going next?
To her.
Okay. While we're passing it, I just want to pick up on that. That, to me, that's sort of the thing that I've been referring to as the web as program guide. At least that's an aspect of it. That there's no reason why anything on the web can't be directing you to a program. And that's part of the reason why the Comcast See It button seems like a really interesting move, because they're positioning that to be a standard enabling technology. I don't know if...
For Comcast.
No, but they're talking about making it a standard that anybody can use. So if
But not
that...
Amazon.
Everything revolves around a business relationship.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know it, it's a button you can put on the web, and it's smart enough to figure out if you have a Comcast set-top box, it'll tune to the channel, it'll program your DVR, or it'll take you to the web to see video if it's not a Comcast.
Well, that's a great observation, though, on how the plumber with the pipeline is going to still control the content, because it's Comcast button, and whether it's Amazon coming through or NBC, it still enhances the reason that you subscribe to broadband.
Except once that gets common, somebody else will do an open version of it.
So I'm glad that we moved to discovery, and I'd love to get your perspectives on the impact of social media on discovery. I notice we don't have any millennials in the room, and they clearly are the ones that are transforming how TV is watched. So Jenna Marbles becomes a big hit comedian because all these teens and 20-somethings have told each other about her. So it's both from Facebook and emails. And if you're not in that group, you might not even know who she is. But if you have a kid who is, or know someone who is. So, so the impact of social media on discovery and on how that helps enhance tune-in. Right now we have Nielsen doing a deal with Twitter TV, so the Nielsen Twitter TV ratings. The premise is that if someone is tweeting about a program, it enhances engagement, and therefore the advertisers will have a more highly engaged audience. So social media impacts the advertiser. And I'd be interested in your perspectives on that. Is it all hype, or is it really happening?
Oh, it's happening.
It's
definitely happening. I mean, spend a lot of time on social media, Twitter, Facebook. We're content producers. We've been producing content. We've been producing television, long-form television, for quite some time. And, you know, lately we've been spending a lot of time on Facebook, Twitter, just trying to engage, you know, the audience, if you will, you know, around our content.
So what I meant, is it really happening? I don't mean, is it, I mean, are people making, like Jenna Marbles launching a career? That's pretty big.
Yeah, that's
where else is there
Were you
big
picking
money?
up on that?
Right, but what I was also going to say in terms of discovery, you know, I think Facebook probably could be half the answer to it, because they have practically everybody's preferences, so.
But that generation is not watching television.
Right.
They're watching it on the computer. It's like the landline phone. You know, it's
Exactly.
it's going to just disappear in that generation.
But somebody had to put money in to get that content made.
Okay. All right, let's stick to
Goes back
the...
the
So I can
producer.
speak to, as kind of the token millennial, I guess. In some ways, it's actually interesting that so many media companies are still looking to Facebook because actual millennials are migrating off Facebook, and they're migrating off Twitter, and they're migrating onto a lot of other new things. I mean, you talk about Snapchat, but I mean, that's going to be hot for now, but there's no kind of monetization that's happening. And only Facebook and Twitter are now starting to monetize as their main contingency is migrating off it. So you're looking to social media as a way of getting advertising to reach these millennials, these people to discover you. But as you finally get to them, they're no longer there.
Well,
And I-
that's if
Go ahead,
if
go
you
first.
suppose, that's if you presuppose that your audience is that audience, the millennials. But there's lots of programming out there that, you know, goes beyond millennials, so.
And I would not jump to, I would warn everybody not to jump to conclusions that the millennials are turning off television. Because the bunch of networks that launched or relaunched the second half of last year, Pivot, El Rey, Revolt, Al Jazeera America, Fox Sports 1, Fusion, are aimed at that audience. And we're going to probably in the next few months start to get the numbers, and we'll see. But I would not say, make a blanket statement like millennials not watching television or they're going to dismiss TV. Because these are where the networks are going and the folks are going after them.
Let's move it back there and then Bill, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi there, Luke from Viacom. I think it's really interesting what you're saying about the social media element. I work a great deal with my channels with our social media team. It doesn't matter which platform it is. It could be Facebook today, tomorrow, Twitter, something else. The point is you're driving these people to content. It's content that they're engaging with. That's what's key. And when people have a profile, be it a Facebook profile or whatever, they value that to the nth degree. It's their personality. They're not going to like a show just for the sake of it. They do it because it's them. Otherwise, all their friends see that they've liked something just for the sake of it. It's not the case. We use them and use those kind of tools. You can drive people onto linear by all means, but I work in digital. That's not my prerogative. We drive people to DTO platforms. It's their choice if they buy SVOD platforms, TiVo, it doesn't matter. The point is you're saying this content is available, it's available here. I think if you look at television as a whole, you're taking everything as one kind of piece. Do we binge watch it? Do we watch it this way? Do we watch it in that way? It's all different. Your Viacom, obviously, we have Nickelodeon, we have Comedy Central, MTV. There's a whole plethora of different, we run the gamut. But Nickelodeon, you might put all that content onto a kid's preloaded device, and they'll pay a premium for that to watch it. You might want to binge watch all this stuff that you're talking about, the scripted. Of course you might want to binge watch that. But when it comes to sports, the idea of hearing a touchdown going in the next department before you've started your pre-recorded TVR is unheard of. So it just depends. And I think that when you talk about the social media element, it's incredibly valuable because as long as you're engaging them in a way that they want to hear, it's important. You talk about the advertising, you're absolutely right. If you advertise on Twitter, that's the way that's funded. It might be a post. You might advertise more with scripted drama by putting product placement in that show, by all means. And when it comes to sports, it's the ads that run between because they're watching it live. It's a combination of these things, really, I guess.
Yeah, actually, I was going to say some of the same thing. If you look at how social media teams work for these media properties, they don't care what the platform is. They'll go wherever they think anyone is. And they'll put stuff on there to try and get an audience, to engage them, and to attract advertisers. I think the challenge is in the fact that there is no, destination. There's a limited notion and dropping notion of destination TV for millennials. My daughter watches, who's 12, watches a certain thing at a certain time, not because it's on Channel 7, at 8:30. And she'll want to get on social media with her friends, but there's totally no guarantee that they're watching the same thing. And so there's a challenge in how do you engage an audience around that. I don't think the challenge is around the platforms for social media because the marketing teams will just go wherever they need to go.
What about the social TV services? I'm curious whether anybody wants to comment and has a sense for, are they getting traction, things like ZBox, GetGlue, and TuneNow, that are synchronized and letting you do social that's specifically related to what you're watching?
I work for a TV company called Granite Broadcasting Corporation. We have a bunch of local TV stations around the country. And this is something we've looked at really closely. We've been thinking of investing in a number of these. And we haven't because what we've concluded through all the research and all the discussions we've had is that this market has basically, Twitter has captured the whole market. And all of these smaller ideas have been enveloped into what Twitter now stands for. And we think they've just won the game here.
But some of these are like a gateway to Twitter where they'll synchronize automatically.
Yeah, but if you look at how people are discovering shows, the conversations that have been going on in the last few minutes, they're all about Facebook or Twitter. We think, and in the research we think shows that Twitter is where people talk about what they're watching, what they think about what they're watching, what their friends are watching. It's not these other ones that are all on the periphery. And that wasn't the case 2 years ago. I think the playing field was much more level then.
Yep, that's true. Twitter.
So do we have another topic?
Today.
Can I go back to Discovery?
Yeah, unified discovery is.
It's still a, no, not defense. But I will say that I'm no longer at Comcast. And my primary client is Microsoft. And the flagship of our offering is Xbox. And on Xbox, we do have aggregated metadata to allow you to discover across all the services that exist on Xbox, including broadcast television. And to Rick's point, anyone can go out there tomorrow and license data from TMS or Rovi and get all of the broadcast data for any station here in the US. Not a problem. Now, try and get the data for all of these OTT services and aggregate those together. That's a complicated matter. And everyone today in business recognizes that their content has great value, but guess what? The metadata about that content also has value. So they're not going to just give that up for free to anyone who comes knocking on their door. Now, in certain cases, a smaller provider will want to give that metadata so that they get discovered in engines, but that's going to be a smaller player. You really want to get the large players involved, and there you're going to have to negotiate. So to the question, I'm sorry, one more quick question about discovery by social media. Yes, there absolutely is this undeniable force called Twitter out there, which is aggregating audiences. But guess what? They're helping to aggregate audiences for broadcast television. So even though these millennials are gobbling up all forms of OTT content, they're also being drawn back into live events on television, mostly sports, but other live events as well. And in certain cases, the live event is something that happens to be broadcasting now that my friends are interested in.
I would get a sense of the audience here. I mean, who is who produces content, who's in content distribution, who's an investor?
Sure.
But do you want to take
Yeah, why don't we do this and then we'll do that.
Hi, I'm Beverly, and I have a user experience and product strategy consulting company for digital. So I come from a digital world, and I'm working with some the TV networks, some Turner right now on their digital properties. And what always surprises me when it comes to content discovery is that the networks themselves are accelerating their demise by not really enabling proper content discovery across different brands, across different shows, within their own ecosystem. So people go to social media, and a lot of engagement is happening in social media, but it's happening by the show or even by the specific actor or character. It's not about the actual delivery. And then you go to the properties, and there's also very poor cross-discovery algorithms or offerings offered. So if people want that, they're forced to go to YouTube or Netflix or other digital native properties to get any kind of sampling of other different shows that they might be interested in. And it's interesting to me that the networks aren't using this opportunity to grow their own ecosystem, including because I look at it as an e-commerce model in terms of monetization. Why aren't they doing basically a conversion funnel where people can sample, try as you buy, and you set the subscription pricing so that the buffet, which is $19.99, is way more attractive than your a la carte at $12.99 plus $8.99, etc. in a menu analogy. They could be changing the model to convert people into traditional subscriptions, whether it's digital or cable or bundled, and they're not doing that.
So
Can I just respond real quickly? And that is, one of the reasons they don't do that is there's a supply chain already established, and if they do that, they're undercutting the partnerships that they have with distributors today, so they have to be very careful about how they migrate to that world. Not that that world wouldn't be successful with consumers, it's just a very difficult business proposition. I can answer your second screen question.
Okay. Yeah, okay, so we're getting close to the time limit, I think. I'd like to hear your answer. And let's do a quick survey, maybe group it. Who here is like related to networks? And let's do a show of hands. Networks, production, distribution, platforms, advertising. Pretty good mix. Did I leave anything significant out?
Devices.
Devices?
Support of.
What?
Support of.
Support?
Of all.
Oh, good. Okay, so happy to hear you. And I think this will be the last comment unless.
The question about the second screen players, and I was interested in the analysis of that. I'm going to try to sidestep a bunch of overlapping NDAs here. Shazam will be the winner. They're playing with house money because they're funded by their music service. Z-Box, for all intents and purposes, is an in-house operation for Comcast and NBC. GetGlue will be licensing out tools and devices through the i.TV app investment, and they might have a chance. Biggle's going public. GetGlue, which is now i.TV. Biggle's going public. They actually have the ability to syndicate some of their features, like Bill Rewards and some of the rest, to the point that they are all being subsumed by Twitter. That's exactly right. But it's an interesting thing to know. Twitter is the most efficient platform for delivering second screen information and content to viewers who are watching television. They're massive, okay? The problem is there ain't nothing to do when you get there. And that's a Twitter problem, okay? They don't have anything for you to do once you've tweeted and you've gotten there. There's still anybody here from Twitter? I don't have an NDA about that. They're a little stupid when it comes to
No, but again, they can deep link. So that's what it's all about.
They can put in HTML5, they can put in fan pages, and they can do the Twitter plays and all the rest of the stuff. The fact of the matter is, they are massively efficient at delivering eyeballs on a second screen to complement television viewing. And they've basically taken that market away from all of the second screen platform guys, with the exception of Shazam, who's playing with house money, okay? The other guys have to find a way to make money that doesn't involve turning over their audience to Twitter. And I write about them.
By the way, one other quick note. If you have not heard the news, DreamWorks has started production of a daily YouTube program. And the idea of that program is to showcase what is on YouTube on a daily basis. In particular, some of the attractions that people don't know about. In a way, they're sort of taking the cue from what broadcast networks used to do at the start of a fall season, which was to produce a half-hour special that would tell you, here's what's coming up this fall season, Monday night, Tuesday night, et cetera, et cetera. So it'd be easy to see if the Everything Old is New Again may work for you too.
Good. So I think we've pretty much run as long as we should. I think this has been great. We are interested in feedback from all of you about the session. We're thinking of making this a series. We can do more on TV, on specific aspects of TV. More likely, the next step would be to do another field. We've talked about things like publishing, retail, journalism, music. The future of X is the theme. So we're interested in, you can talk to us individually. Afterwards, email us. We'll send advertising.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out and for sharing your thoughts and input. It was very exciting. And please continue kind of your collaborations and conversations like outside over wine and more cookies. And please come up to us and kind of get our information and stay in touch. Thank you so much.